Welcome to Presentation 2 on Introduction to Databases for the Leaving Certificate Computer Studies course. In this presentation, we are going to learn how fields, data types, and records are used to make database tables. Let's start by looking at records. Now, the purpose of a database is to store information about items or objects, like cars, students, books, etc. So for every item in our database, there is a record. So in a database of cars, each car makes up one record. Each student is one record in a student database. And in a book database, each book will be a record. Records in a database table make up the rows of the table. You can see in this example here that there are two records in this database. One is for a Ford Focus and one is for a Toyota Avensis. Each car is a record. Each record is divided up into categories. These categories are called fields. You'll see that the fields make up the columns in our database table. The fields in this database are make, model, registration number, color, mileage, engine, and fuel. So let's look at that together. Your table is divided into records and fields. The fields being the categories that the data is divided into, and the records being all the data related to one item or object in our database. Now there are some important points to note when we are creating a database table. Firstly, our table must contain one special field called a key field. It is a requirement that the key field has no duplicate values, so no two records can have the same value in that key field. For instance, the field make could not be a key field in a car database because I could have two cars with the same make. Likewise with model. In a car database, the only field I could use as a key field would be the car registration number, as that is the only field where every car will have a different value. For a database of people in Ireland, I could use a PPS number because no two people have the same PPS number. In a student database in a school, the student ID will be the key field because no two students can have the same ID. When you create a table in Access, Access will automatically put in one ID field for you and mark it as the primary key, as we'll see later when we're looking at an example. The next thing you need to understand is about data types. When setting up a database table, you must tell the computer the type of data that each field will contain. This is important because you can only carry out certain tasks on certain types of data. Also, it will help you reduce the size of your database, which is very important on bigger databases. If you do not set up the correct data types, your database will not work properly. So it's very important when setting up a database to get it right from the start. Let's look at some common data types. I'm using the example of a car database once more. You'll see that the field called make has a text data type because it's used to store text. The word Ford, Toyota, they're all pieces of text. Same with the model. I'm typing text, Focus, Avensis, etc. Now the registration number is a mix of numbers and text, but unless it's only numbers, you must make that text. For instance, a mobile phone number would also have to be a text field because it begins with a 0. You cannot carry out certain searches on text fields such as greater than or less than. You can only carry those out on number fields. So if you look across to mileage, that's our first number field. Engine is also a number field. Fuel could be a text field, but I've chosen to make it a special type of a field called a lookup field. A lookup field you can type in a lookup is a special type of text field where the entries are put into a drop-down menu. You would use a lookup field where you were entering the same information for a lot of different records in your table. Such as for cars, most cars are petrol or diesel, so rather than typing petrol and diesel in every time, with the lookup field you need only select them from a drop-down menu. The next field is price, and that's a currency field. And the last field is date, and that's a date field. Let's have a look at all the different data types you have in Access. The most common is the text data type. That can store up to 255 typed characters. The memo is another type of text field but can store much more text. The number is a field you use for numbers. Date and time is a field you'd use for date and times. Currency, once again, very straightforward. That's for when you're storing currencies in your field. Auto number is a field that will automatically increment the number in the field as you add records to the table. So it starts at 1. If I add another record, that will automatically go 2, 3, 4, etc. Now while you're entering information into your database, you cannot enter any information into the auto number field because that's controlled by the computer. The obvious use of auto number is for a primary key field because it will make sure that you don't have the same value in twice. Another field is yes and no. Very useful if you're making a database that requires people to pay, because you can tick off when they've paid using a yes and no field. An OLE object, that's for embedding items into your database like pictures, etc. Hyperlink is for adding a hyperlink, a piece of text that will bring you somewhere on the web. You can also add attachments as a data type. One of your fields can be a calculated field where you can use values from other fields to populate that field. A calculated field can use the values from two other fields. You can add, multiply, subtract two other fields to give your total for your calculated field. And the final one is the lookup wizard, where I can type in a list of values, and then when I'm filling in my database table, I need only select those values from a drop-down menu.